Welcome to Learning Happy Hour. This is a special bonus episode where we bring you a full interview we did with Martin Walter, the product manager over the threat services at Palo Alto Networks.
Martin has got some great insight in what is behind the DNS Security Service and how it enhances 9.0 and customer threat prevention. We also talk about some of Martin's favorite things to do.
He's a biker.
Yeah, he likes to cycle. Yeah. So you're going to want to hang out and watch this episode and enjoy Martin Walter's insights around DNS security. Cheers.
Welcome to a bonus episode of Learning Happy Hour with Mitch and Jason. Remember to BYOB. Bring your own brain. Cheers!
So what can you tell us about DNS security? Why are we doing this? What do we expect to benefit? How do we expect to benefit our customers, I guess?
But I think there's a few things to talk about. First of all, how is DNS used with attacks and threats, etc.? And it's usually, like in the simplest case, you have a piece of malware that lands on an endpoint, infests the endpoint, establishes a foothold, and then tries to call home to see, like, hey, what do you want me to do? Right?
Mm-hmm.
I landed. What do you want me to do? And in order to find that server that has these additional instructions, they usually do a DNS lookup because, of course, machines connect to machines over network addresses, right? And the resolution between those human readable names and those addresses is DNS. So they issue a DNS lookup and then contact the command and control server. So first of all, at that level, we can already see from a DNS perspective who are they talking to, who do they want to talk to. What is also interesting is that they found means around these methods, around these techniques, where we essentially tell a firewall or any security device, here are all the malicious domains. If you see a call out to these domains, that's command and control. So they found some ways around it, so we have to adapt to those and so forth.
So how is this different than the DNS sinkhole feature, which PanOS has today?
Actually, DNS sinkhole is a policy action. So we still use the sinkhole feature. The sinkhole feature is primarily used to allow customers identify the actual infected endpoint. Because usually when you just look at DNS, what you see is DNS requests come out from your DNS server.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the source IP address of that request to identify who's infected, you would think your DNS server is owned by the whole internet.
That's a bad day.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the real reason for DNS sinkhole is to find your infected host.
Exactly. So it's a policy action. And what we do with DNS security with this new functionality is provide the intelligence so customers can use this policy action on DNS traffic. Does that make sense?
To be honest, not really, yeah. So
first of all, you got to tell the device what is bad.
Yes.
And if it sees something bad, it will then take the configured policy action,
right,
which is alert, block, sinkhole.
Yep. So how do I tell the firewall what's bad?
So what we used to do in the past was, as part of the antivirus update, we provided the firewall with a list of 100,000 known bad domains.
Okay.
And essentially said, hey, look for these. And if you see these, take the configured policy action.
Mm.
However, we outgrew that feature a long time ago. And there's a couple of other problems with that. Like if you provide a static list to a firewall, first you have to deal with capacity issues.
Yeah.
How big can that list be that you put in the firewall? Second, you deal with the problem of how do customers update this list? And how up-to-date is that information really, and is it still effective?
Right.
A lot of malware domains we see are up for like a couple of hours, and that's it. Right? Yeah. So if you download a list on a daily basis, it doesn't do anything for you.
Right.
And then, of course, there's some, what do we do about unknown command and control domains? Can we detect those? And what do we do about the means that adversaries use to still get around all of that?
Like DNS tunneling or data exfiltration.
Domain generation algorithms, right? DGA is a really interesting topic. This is really like where they automate the whole process of standing up new domains that we don't know yet, so that now we can still connect. DNS tunneling is an interesting one. That's the abuse of the DNS protocol to exfiltrate and infiltrate data.
Right. And there's Linux packages and Windows packages like Iodine that do that very easily.
From an engineering perspective, it's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it's obviously bad.
Right. So are these the kind of things that the new service would be able to prevent?
Yeah. So the new service essentially is a purely cloud-based approach, very much like PanDB.
Oh,
So like
Yep.
URL filtering only for
Same concept.
yeah,
Same concept.
DNS.
Yes.
Okay.
Same concept, though the requirements are slightly different because from a latency perspective, we have to be very sensitive to, keeping latency low, of course, because if you slow down DNS, you slow down everything. So got to make sure we don't slow things down, right? So user experience is still great. But in general, very much like PanDB.
okay.
So the firewall sees a request, lets it go through, we reach out to the cloud and are like, what do we know about this so we can shut it down right then?
Nice. How will we differentiate ourselves?
That's actually a good question. So through a couple of different ways. So first of all, we know of north of 36 million bad domains, command and control domains out there.
Part of it is Wildfire.
Exactly. So just like the wealth of information we have through Wildfire differentiates that already, because we have a lot more meaningful, interesting information to provide to our customers. Excuse me. That's number one. Number two, the infrastructure is set up so we can update any information in real time, which means if we find something new, we can make it available to our customers within seconds and to all of our customers. And then number three, we came up with some really interesting ways to inline detect domain generation algorithms. You can hardly predict the domains that are being used by a domain generation algorithm like tomorrow, or like the next couple hours, next second. So we found ways to detect these by looking at entropy, looking at frequencies, etc. So we're using the hell out of machine learning to detect these guys proactively.
That's awesome.
And that's really what differentiates us. We can also apply the same to DNS tunneling or like similar mechanisms to detect DNS tunneling and then flag it and help customers take action on that.
Interesting.
So since this is a lot like our PanDB service, what is what role does Wildfire play here? Are we gonna use dynamic analysis and resolve all these domains and run it in a sandbox before we hand resolution back to the requester?
Well, I think so. What we do right now is we of course ingest a lot of information from Wildfire to provide it to our customers and provide prevention capabilities. I think it also goes the other way around, where we use that information to drive verdict in Wildfire. Like if we see a sample call out to a known command and control domain,
Oh yeah, right.
That's awesome.
Right.
what benign sample would do that?
Right.
Right. So it kind of goes both ways.
So it's in a lot of ways it's extending Wildfire's capabilities.
We help drive verdict.
Okay.
I wouldn't say we extend. I mean, it already has a wealth of capabilities.
Right.
We're just adding one.
Nice.
Right. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any examples where DNS was involved in a breach in a really significant way, or are there stories you could cite that led us to arrive at this service?
A really interesting example is the whole oil rig campaign that Unit 42 talked about at length. The problem really with DNS is twofold, right? It's been around forever. Pretty much, there is not a lot of people who really understand how it works and what it does and what you can do with it. And at the same time, we cannot live without DNS. So every customer punches a hole in the DNS in the firewall to allow DNS.
Yeah.
So DNS is always allowed. Not a lot of people have a good handle on it to understand what it really does in the network. Now the adversaries use it. In the case of oil rig, they know that this hole exists. They know that they can abuse the DNS server as a proxy for their command and control connection. So they heavily use it for DNS tunneling to infiltrate and exfiltrate information. So that's where we see that on being used heavily, specifically with targeted attacks such as oil rig.
So they use the DNS protocols to exfiltrate and infiltrate data. Now, was that just taking certain characters and then converting in base 64 and then making that a DNS request, or how did they do that?
So pretty much like that. So they take a document, a file, whatever, right? Break it down in individual chunks of information that still fit the specification of the maximum host name length in the RC. Base 64 encoded, prepend the domain name with that chunk of data. Run a DNS lookup for that resulting host name. That DNS lookup arrives at their DNS server. It's like the SOA for their domain.
SOA.
It's a name server authority.
Oh, startup authority. Sorry. Yeah, that's right.
So so arrives at their DNS server, which is specifically prepared to take out the host name portion, base64 decoded, add it to this document until it transferred the full document.
Sure, that makes sense.
And it works the same way back. Yeah. It's actually low and slow. It doesn't have to be slow. It can be pretty quick. You just see a huge spike in DNS traffic all of a sudden.
Well, what's interesting about that, Jason and I train our customers, and I frequently have students, we're looking at the dashboard or the ACC, and they see that big block on the heat map for DNS, and they're like, this is taking up too much space. How do I get rid of that?
They filter it out of their reports, right?
Or they'll just create a specific rule allowing DNS and turn logging off for that rule.
Yeah, right.
Because they don't have any visibility into it. They don't know the threat potential.
Exactly.
And then how many people actually look at their DNS logs?
Yeah, what can you do about it? Can't you just block DNS requests or responses over certain sizes? Wouldn't that thwart some of this?
No, because as I said earlier, the adversary, they really try to stay within the bounds of the RFC.
Oh.
Don't rattle anybody, just make sure you don't do anything abnormal. And so with that, it's really hard to do that. And we do see very long FQDNs that are legitimate. Like think of all the different CDNs that spin up dynamically.
Like
even
new
AWS. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? They bring up new machines and they don't use human mutable names. So you have these weird looking host names and it's a perfectly legitimate service. So you can't just go by size or block.
Okay. Because I've looked in my, there's a filter string you can do, and you can see DNS queries over 2048 bytes or 4096 bytes, and it's like, cow.
Yeah, you wouldn't see those with OIRIC. With OIRIC, they really stay like between 1K and 2K. So perfectly normal.
Wow.
Actually 1K, under 1K.
Okay. So would you say that this is primarily targeted against, APTs, nation states, espionage?
That's what we see right now. But I think because it's so easy to use it and because so many tools out there now that embed that functionality, and because everybody punches a hole in the firewall for DNS and it's not well understood, chances are you're going to see this being commoditized more in the future.
Sure. Yeah. There was a statistic floating around, something like 91% of all malware is using DNS at some point in the cyber attack lifecycle, whether at the front end with the phishing and then the command and control, especially, and that kind of thing. So the recommendation was you need to do something to secure your DNS. So you mentioned earlier that these services are very different than DNS Sec. So what's do you have any insight into why DNS Sec really hasn't taken off and why it's not effective?
Or DOT or DOH?
Some of these other DNS security methods.
I mean, on DOT and DOH, I have some opinions, and I wanna save those opinions for beer, maybe, I don't know. But DNSSEC really focuses on authenticating the DNS request and the response, making sure that the response you get as a client is legitimate and actually comes from the authoritative DNS server. So it's a whole different approach, right? This is more like trying to do SSL-ish for DNS, whereas what we do with DNS security is really providing means and techniques to prevent DNS being abused for cyber attacks.
So DNSSEC, DOT, DOH are securing the communication between you and the DNS server, but don't care about what you're resolving to or anything. And our DNS security service does care about payload resolution and make sure that, and so we're not doing any kind of that message integrity, but we are checking just to make sure that there's nothing malicious in the payload.
Are you calling out to a command and control domain? Are you using the DGA for that same purpose? Or are you trying to abuse DNS for exfiltration, infiltration? Those are the three things we're looking for.
Okay, nice.
So I have another question, and this is not necessarily directly related to the new DNS service, but in terms of DNS Proxy on the firewall.
Oh, major segue. All right.
Yeah. So when would a customer consider using DNS Proxy in this conversation about protecting the network?
That is an interesting question. I think for protecting the network, there is really not a whole lot you get out of the DNS proxy. It's really more unless well, there's something you could do. It's really more a means to provide DNS resolution to potential remote networks, like remote offices, etc. What you could do is, I believe that's also, isn't that a 9.0 feature, or was it an 8.1 feature? You could set up a NAT rule that says, hey, any request UDP port 53 or 52 outbound, I want a destination NAT to my DNS proxy. Because that way, you already prevent anybody from calling out to a DNS server directly that may or may not be malicious. So that way, you at least retain control over what can be resolved in your network, and is it legitimate or not.
So you're defending against like rogue DNS?
For example, yeah. That's one thing that would come to mind.
As a cloud-based service, then there's the logging service, there's going to be quite a bit of data associated. Is privacy going to be a concern or not?
From a logging standpoint, we don't log the source IP address of the request because, frankly, we don't even know it, right? If anything, we would only see your DNS server, and we don't care about that information.
Gotcha.
So what we log is we log the serial number of the device. Sure, that's what we always do. The DNS server that is being used, like the outbound DNS server, as well as the domain that is being looked up. And we do this primarily so we can reference like where is this request going to, so we get a better picture of like what is the DNS resolution going to look like for the endpoint. That's what we log. But there will also be a data privacy statement that's in the works right now, like with every service we have, that talks in detail about what we log, what we don't log, how long we retain data, etc., and what we use it for, of course.
Nice. Thank you.
Okay.
So what's next? What are the next steps with this DNS service, and where do you see that coming or that going, I should say?
Well, without talking about roadmap.
Right, because we don't talk about roadmap.
Exactly. I think the obvious next steps are to look at what else can we do in terms of providing meaningful prevention capabilities via DNS, or like prevention capabilities for threats that use DNS. And you will see a lot more features we're adding and capabilities, detection capabilities we're adding in the cloud. The benefit for that is obviously the customers don't have to update anything, right? It's like as soon as we roll out these new features, they are available to every customer.
It's a DevOps approach, right?
Pretty much,
yeah.
Pretty much. So you will see a lot more capabilities around that. And then, of course, we're curious for customer feedback. We really want to know what customers think about the feature, how it works for them, some things they would like to get out of the feature that we haven't done yet. So we'll see where that takes us. I'm very interested in customer feedback. Very interested in customer just meetings, talking about these issues that they face. I'm just thinking about if it was up to me, I would be traveling the whole time. I would just be visiting customers all the time. Unfortunately, that doesn't work that way. So maybe a good way. Happy to, but I think a good way for us to interface with a lot of customers who are really serious about our products and have a lot of great feedback to provide is usually through Ignite, the conference, because most of the product managers go, and it's just a great venue to have these conversations.
So that was going to be a question. What's the best way to interact with you? And if it's at Ignite, how would someone find you at Ignite? Is there a Q&A panel that you go to, or just flag you down?
There'll probably be sessions.
Just find the guy with a mountain bike T-shirt and you're good.
All right, you guys heard that.
I mean, another thing is also if we travel, right? We do travel. And what I would always like to do is, in a specific region where I travel to, I like to hit up as many customers as I possibly can. So when we come into town, try to make time for us. Okay. It would be awesome. I know every single one of our product managers is very eager to figure out or to know what is it we don't do, that we're not doing well. What are the things that our customers think we're missing? Just to also give us the opportunity to make sure that we deliver new and innovative functionalities that really address customer problems. It doesn't make sense if we come out with something innovative and it just sits on the shelf. Doesn't help the customer, doesn't help us. Right. Help us solve the right problems.
Right.
That's really what it is. Okay.
So did the DNS security features come from customer requests?
Yes and no. Some of it was from customer requests. The other portion was we just saw certain developments that made us concerned, in that sense that the technologies that are available today may not be as adequate. So we just felt like we need to do something. Because when you look at, like, most companies provide either static solutions, like a static list, smaller, bigger, or they don't see everything that's going on in the network and only see DNS. And I think neither one of those provide the right answer. You have to have the dynamic capabilities, and you have to be able to see all network traffic to make sense of it.
That makes a lot of sense, actually, because just focusing solely on DNS without correlating that to any of the other types of traffic.
Makes no sense.
Exactly. Nice. So you guys are on a pretty steady development clip. Can we look forward to new features in minor releases or just maintenance? Or sorry, in maintenance releases or just minor releases?
So the beauty of the cloud is we can release constantly.
That's right.
So customers don't have to update anything. They don't have to look for releases, etc. All of a sudden, they will just see, hey, man, Palo Alto is picking up something entirely new, and I can take action on it. It will be totally transparent to customers. They will just see increasing capabilities to detect threats dynamically, because that's what we're going to be focusing on.
So it'll get better and better, and you don't have to do anything except use the product.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great.
Exactly.
Is there going to be a fee associated with this service, or?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And there's a reason for that, right? We're solving some significant problems that customers deal with today. There are products out there already, and we think we can do a better job. And then also economically speaking, it just having that revenue stream also helps us to maintain a solid cadence around the innovations we want to bring to market, all the new features we want to add based on customer feedback, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that infrastructure in the cloud.
It's expensive to run it.
Yeah.
So it's not a one and done thing that we would just give away with a new version of Palo.
It's not a static list.
Right.
This is much more involved.
This will evolve.
Ongoing intelligence, ongoing information we gather, ongoing analysis we add, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
So you're paying, essentially economically, we got to pay for the compute. Right.
And the innovation.
Yeah.
Because that means we have to have people that innovate, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, nice.
So speaking of innovation, how did you get into this?
That's a good question.
Into the DNS security thing?
Yeah. And to expand that into cybersecurity, like, what's your background?
Did you start up as a hacker?
No.
Oh.
Well.
I love it.
No.
He hacks bikes. But
Yes.
Yeah. How did I get into this space? Actually, it's kind of funny. So way back, way back, there was a popular firewall called Gauntlet Firewall. It was a.
I remember the video game. Is it similar to the video, like you're a packet, you're either a wizard or
no. So I was working with Linux and for a long time and BSD and whatnot. So a friend of mine, he started a job in cybersecurity, built a cybersecurity unit like relatively early on, like way back when. And he said, hey, we have this Gauntlet firewall. It was PHP Gauntlet. And I was playing like a little bit with proxies at the time and packet filters and stuff in Unix. And he said, and it's not booting up. Somebody configured the network and network settings and it's not booting up. Can you have a look? So I looked at it and somebody just screwed up the network configuration.
Failed to boot because of that?
Well, they didn't really have like validity checks of like the input. So the IP address he hacked in was 0000, which obviously doesn't help.
Right.
So the box just hung. So I booted up in single user mode, fixed everything, booted up, came up fine. And then my buddy was like, do you want a job? That's how I ended up in security.
That's great.
Fantastic.
That's how I started off.
So how did we get interested in DNS security? Was it from the oil rig campaign specifically or others?
Well, I worked with DNS quite a bit in the past, more from a sysadmin perspective. And then when we were looking at our feature capabilities and we were looking at something like oil rig, we realized, first of all, there's way too much going on in terms of intel we need to shove into the firewall. There's maybe dynamic analysis needed. So we essentially laid out the problems, and that just made it really interesting for me to say, like, hey, just take a crack at that. Like, for me personally, it's like the harder the problem, the more interested I get. And it was a hard problem,
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun.
That's great.
It's a lot of fun.
Will the DNS service be available for all versions of PanOS or limited to specific ones?
Unfortunately, it's limited to 9.0 and above.
Oh, okay.
So you do have to upgrade. But it's a little bit of pain, understand. But you get to take advantage of a lot of great features, even outside of DNS security. There's a lot that's coming, a lot of changes on URL filtering on the PanDB side, improved the new functionalities on the EDL side. App ID saw some great features we adding. It's pretty amazing. So there's a lot of really amazing functionality we're putting out. So good reasons to upgrade.
Yeah.
Good reasons to upgrade. DNS security just being one of them.
What kinds of topics or things got you interested or curious right now in your life?
What's fun is actually it's not in tech at all. It's van life. My wifey and I, we're big mountain bikers, so hence my mountain biking t-shirt, of course.
Bend, Oregon.
That's what
Exactly,
Jason.
yeah.
Well,
seriously, you're from Bend?
I'm from Portland.
Portland, oh, awesome.
I spent time in Bend. Yeah.
So-
Got a nice golf course out there.
Yeah,
A few.
which I never go on. I'm usually on trails.
You been to Moab?
No, not yet. It's still on our bucket list.
It's fun.
Still on our bucket list. But because of that, because there's all these exciting places and stuff, my wife and I, we're looking into, van life. Like a Mercedes 4x4 Sprinter van, we wanna buy one, build it up as an RV, a specific mountain biking RV, and that's what I'm curious about right now. That's what I'm really excited about right now.
I've seen a lot of, the whole tiny home movement has got a lot of people doing a lot of those conversions.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that'd be awesome.
So maybe you're gonna see me in the parking lot with my van one time. If I work too long, I don't know. I'm gonna stay.
Do you mind if we call on you again in the future for other threat-focused features or talk about mountain bikes?
I like the topic too.
All right, nice. Anything you want to?
No, I think it's great. It's great having you, Martin. It's nice to meet you and to have this conversation. And I know that because of the role DNS plays and how significant it is and the trends that you talked about. We were talking to Brian Lee, Unit 42, in the earlier interview, and just following the news, like this is going to be, I think, a huge feature, and a lot of customers are going to benefit. And it's a great part of the prevention platform, right? The prevention story. And I'm excited about it for customers' sake. I think it's
Well, next time maybe we can do it a little bit later, and we can have some Deschutes beer. And,
Yes.
Deschutes beer, yes. You're talking my language.
We'll go upstairs and use the dartboard. How's that?
Sounds good.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Really
Thank you, guys.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.